It was late evening in a small town where the streets turned quiet as soon as the sun slipped behind the hills. Street lamps flickered on one by one, and the gentle hum of distant traffic was all that broke the silence. For Daniel, a single father of a 15-year-old daughter named Emily, these hours were often the hardest. That was when the loneliness crept in, when the weight of his responsibilities pressed the heaviest. Daniel wasn't a man of many words. He had been quiet most of his life, always the one who carried burdens without complaint, who swallowed his anger, who chose to step aside, rather than step forward. After his wife passed away suddenly 5 years ago, he raised Emily on his own, working double shifts at a mechanic's garage to keep food on the table. His hands were rough with grease and scars, but his heart beat for one thing only, making sure Emily never felt unloved. Emily was his light. She was bright, warm, and carried a smile that reminded him of her mother. But being a teenage girl in a small town wasn't easy, especially when whispers spread quickly, and cruel words echoed louder than kindness. One Friday night, Daniel agreed to let Emily meet her friends at the local diner after school. He was reluctant. He knew how some kids could be, how they had mocked Emily for her hand-me-down clothes, or for the fact that her dad worked with his hands instead of sitting in some office. But Emily pleaded with him, promising she'd be careful, promising she'd be home before dark. And Daniel, wanting her to live as normal a life as possible, gave her a tired smile and said yes. The diner was buzzing with teenagers, laughter, and jukebox music. Emily sat in a booth near the back with two of her closest friends. For a while, she forgot about the world outside. She laughed, shared fries, and even sang along under her breath to the old songs playing. But in the corner of the diner sat a group of boys from her school, the kind who thrived on mocking others, who carried arrogance like armor. They watched her, whispering to each other, snickering. It didn't take long before one of them swaggered over, leaning on the booth where Emily sat. Well, if it isn't the garage girl, he sneered loud enough for everyone to hear. His friends chuckled from the corner. Tell me, Emily, do you smell like oil and gasoline too, or is that just your old man? The booth grew silent. Emily's cheeks flushed, but she tried to ignore him. Her friends shifted uncomfortably. The boy leaned closer, his voice dropping to something uglier. You think you're too good for us? Acting all smart in class? Everyone knows you're just trash. Bet your mom left, because she couldn't stand it. Those words stabbed deeper than any blade. Emily's mother hadn't left. She had died. And that cruel twist, that deliberate jab, shattered the thin wall she held round her heart. Tears pricked her eyes, but she held them back, whispering only, "Please, leave me alone." The boy laughed. "Ah, did I hit a nerve? Yes, Daddy isn't man enough to defend you." At that moment, Emily's hand trembled on her phone. She texted her father just 2 words, "Dad, please." Daniel was in his garage, wiping oil off his hands after a long day. When his phone buzzed, and he read those words, something inside him ignited a fire that had been smoldering for years. He had stayed silent when people whispered behind his back, when customers mocked his accent, when neighbors avoided him at the grocery store, because he looked too worn out, too broken. But his daughter was different. Nobody had the right to dim her light. Daniel drove to the diner in his old truck, the engine roaring louder than usual. When he walked in, every eye turned. He wasn't tall, but he carried himself with the weight of a man who had endured storms. His work boots echoed on the tiled floor as he spotted Emily's tear-stained face. He didn't need an explanation. He saw the boy leaning against her booth, smirking, and the laughter of his friends behind him. Daniel's jaw clenched. He walked straight up, his voice calm but razor-sharp. "Get away from my daughter." The boy scoffed, rolling his eyes. "What's the matter, old man? Can't handle a joke?" Daniel's hands, calloused and strong, twitched at his sides. For years, he had kept his fists in his pockets, his voice muted, his pain buried. But tonight, something snapped. Tonight, he wasn't just a mechanic, or a widower, or a man too tired to fight back. Tonight, he was a father. The boy opened his mouth again, this time saying something filthy, something so cruel that Emily gasped. And that was it. Daniel moved faster than anyone expected. His fist connected with the boy's nose, sending him stumbling back with a cry. Blood spattered across the floor. Gasps erupted in the diner. The boy's friends rushed forward, but Daniel's fury was unstoppable. Years of silence erupted in 2 more swift punches, leaving them groaning on the floor, noses broken, pride shattered. For a moment, the diner froze in stunned silence. The jukebox played on, the sound strangely hollow against the heavy breathing in the room. Daniel stood tall, his chest rising and falling. He turned to Emily, who sat wide-eyed, trembling. Gently, he reached out his hand. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go." She slipped her hand into his, and for the first time in a long time, she felt safe. Truly safe. As they walked out of the diner, whispers followed. Some were shocked. Some were awed. But one thing was clear, Daniel had broken more than noses that night. He had broken the silence of a man too long underestimated, too long dismissed. In the quiet of the truck, Emily's tears finally spilled. "Dad, you didn't have to." But Daniel squeezed her hand and whispered, "I did. Because you're my world. And no one talks to you like that." The streetlights spluttered past as they drove home, and though the world outside still held cruelty, inside that truck there was something unbreakable, love, fierce and unyielding. That night, Emily realized her father was more than the man who fixed cars and worked late to shifts. He was her protector, her shield, her reminder that sometimes silence must be broken not with words, but with courage. And Daniel, for the first time in years, he didn't feel weak or worn. He felt alive. He had found his voice, his strength, in the one thing that had kept him going all along, love for his daughter. So remember this: sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest hearts. And when they finally break their silence, the world will never forget. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe for more stories of kindness.